Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's ACT Prep webinar. This one is about reading. My name's Mary Cook. I'm the ACT coordinator for Metro Nashville Public Schools. In just a moment, I don't see that Teresa is here. We have someone here from who will be joining us from Conexión Americas. And she can help with some Spanish information. Like I said, this can be, like I said in an email and also posted on the website, this can be closed captioned in the language of your choice. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that in English, and then Teresa will come in and give you that information in Spanish. You may end up typing it into the chat. But if you need subtitles, if you go on the top of your team screen, you'll see 3 dots where it says more. And when you hover over it, it'll say more actions. So if you click on that more, and then scroll down to the, looks like the 5th line where it says language and speech. And then when you click there, you'll get an option that says turn on live captions. And once you click there, then you can, there's going to be a place where you can choose the language you want. Right now I'm seeing it in English because I didn't choose a different language. But you can, and then if it starts bugging you, because closed captions bug me when they're in English and I'm speaking English, you can also turn them off that same way. Like I said, we'll get some instructions in the chat for you about that as well. I am going to actually hang out and listen because our presenter is, I'm going to allow her to introduce herself for the most part, but she's joining us from the Oasis College Connection. And she does a lot of ACT prep work, particularly in the Southeast Nashville Library down there in kind of the Hickory Hollow area. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Nina Brown.
Thanks, Mary. Hi. Can everybody hear me? Sound okay? All right. Mary, do you want me to share my screen for the, or do you want to leave this up for a little bit?
No, you go ahead. I'll stop sharing. You go ahead and share your screen, and then you can control the PowerPoint.
Loading. All right. Does that look okay to everybody there? Yeah. Thanks. Cool. All right, so like Mary said, my name's Nina Brown. I work for an organization called Oasis College Connection. We work across many different metro schools to support students with all things college, whether that's applying to school or looking at scholarships, or if you're an underclassman, just having conversations about how you can prepare and make a plan. So if you want more information later, I'm sure my contact will be available. Like Mary said, today we're going to cover the reading ACT, but real quick plug for our 2 ACT prep courses that we have. So like Mary said, I teach an ACT prep course on Tuesday evenings from 4 to 5 p.m. at the Southeast Library. Everyone is welcome to come. You can just drop in if you want. The information for that's on the left, the one that's like blue and yellow. And then we also have a new ACT prep course that's at the Bellevue Library, taught by my coworker Daniel, and that's Mondays from 4 to 5 p.m. That's the calendar, and both of those QR codes will take you to the sign up for our remind text, but they're all free. Just anyone can drop in and come, and there will be more information on that at the end if you want to get that later. Okie dokie, and we can go ahead and just jump into the information about the reading ACT today. So, getting to know the reading section of the ACT. This is the 3rd section that you'll take, and it's right after your nice little 15-minute break. So hopefully your brains will be refreshed and ready to take in new information and do your best. General information to know, there's 40 questions to answer, and you have about 35 minutes to answer those questions. To get a 21 on the ACT, you only need to get, or to get a 21 on the reading portion of the ACT, you need to get 26 out of the 40 questions correct. I use 21 as a general baseline. That's the composite college readiness score, but it's a good one to use as an understanding of about how many need to get right to get that score. So that's about a 65% on the test overall. And difficulty-wise, passages are between an 11th grade to college level. I really think content-wise, the reading section can be the hardest, but the more you practice with comprehension and some of the tips that we talk about, the better you'll get at improving your score. All right, so getting to know the content more specifically. We talk about the reading ACT, but what is it going to look like? So, as we mentioned, there's going to be passages that you read and then questions that you answer about those passages. But specifically, most of the questions are going to center around key ideas and details. So, over half of the questions are going to focus on this. So, this is going to ask for you to really have strong comprehension of what the main idea is, what themes are being carried out throughout by the author, and ask you to draw reasonable conclusions about those themes. The second most, or the questions will, most of the questions will be on craft and structure. So 25 to 30% of the questions are going to be on this, the next biggest category. And this is going to really center around a lot of vocabulary. So understanding word choice, why an author might use a specific word. And it also might ask you to differentiate between different perspectives, if there are multiple authors giving different perspectives, or if it might ask you to like compare sources of information, things like that. And then the third category, which is the least amount of questions, are going to be based on integration of knowledge and ideas. So this kind of goes hand in hand with key ideas and details, where you're going to need to make sure you understand the author's claims, differentiate between fact and opinion, but also might require you to pull on some outside knowledge. So based on general knowledge that you know about the world, how might this author's point of view compare? So I know that's a lot of information. In brief, the things that I want you to at least take away from today, if it's not all of those detailed things from the ACT, the reading section is really going to test your ability to understand the main idea of a passage, and your ability to summarize key ideas and details. It's going to test your vocabulary, especially in context, which we'll talk about. So improving your vocabulary is really going to help you on the reading ACT. And then it's also going to test your ability to find supporting evidence for main ideas or claims the author might make within the text. So this is really going to come in with speed and your ability to find specific details within the text as you're answering questions. All right. So now we're going to jump into specific tips now that you have a general overview of what the content might look like. As a reminder and just general disclaimer, today we're focusing on how to approach the test, how to guess when you need to guess, how to pace yourself in practice. I'm not a content expert. I'm not a reading teacher. If you have questions about specific, like maybe different topics or terms on the test, or you don't understand why an answer is the answer, I would encourage you to find an English teacher or a reading teacher that might be able to help you. And my biggest tip, which I'll say 1,000 times, you'll be tired of hearing me say it, the best way to improve your score on the reading ACT is to read, read, read. So it's really hard to do well on this without practicing your reading and your comprehension skills. So practice really is the best prep that I can encourage you to do. All right. So tip number one, like I said, you're going to be tired of hearing me say this. My biggest tip for success on the reading section is to read and read consistently. And it doesn't have to be boring school reading, but you need to find a way to set a higher goal, improve your reading, do something. So maybe you're reading nothing at all. Maybe you never read outside of school. Maybe set a goal to just read an extra, like maybe one more book before you take the ACT March 7th or whenever you guys are taking it. Maybe you're going to read 30 minutes a day if you read like only every once in a while. Maybe you read an hour a day if you're already reading pretty consistently. Just think about ways that you can increase the amount that you're reading. And you can read fun stuff. Find things that are interesting to you. If you don't have a library card, get one. If you're a Metro student, you should already have a library card associated with your student ID, your 190 number. So you already have access to the library. If you don't know what to read, ask a librarian. They might have some tips. Check out the displays, things like that. Just see if you can challenge yourself to read a little bit more. All right. The next tip that goes along with reading is improving and increasing your speed. So again, like we said at the beginning, there's 40 questions, 35 minutes. You got to be fast. So the more you can not only improve your ability to read and pay attention to your reading, but also do it quickly, the better you're going to do. So see if you can practice reading quickly, but still maintaining that comprehension. A big problem that I always have had in school and things, it's like you're reading something, but you're not really paying attention to what you're reading. And then by the time you get to the end of it, you're thinking about something else. You don't really know what was happening. So along with your speed, practice going faster, but also make sure you can quiz yourself and you know what you just read. So we'll talk about different strategies that you can do to try to make the most of your reading speed. Okay. All right, so this is where I need you guys to utilize the resources that Mary sent out to you. So you should have all gotten links to the preparing for the ACT document. There's one sent out in Spanish and one sent out in English in that email. So if you guys can pull up that document and scroll to the reading section, I'm going to give you a little time to do that, but specifically, if you can scroll to page 34 of that document, it'll take you to passage 2. And if you guys can, maybe like, sweet, Mary just sent it in the chat. So if you don't want to go sift through the email, you can find it there. And once you get there, if you guys will just like raise your hands or maybe do a little reaction or something, so I know that you're there, that would be super helpful. I'll give you guys a few minutes to get there. Cool. Thanks. It's page 34 of the preparing for the ACT guide. So again, if you get to the page, go ahead and put your hand up. I'll give you guys like maybe 30 more seconds to get there. I can.
To put your hand up, if you look at the top bar of little icons, there's a little, looks like a palm, and it says raise. If you click on that, that raises your hand.
Thanks, Mary. I should have that instruction. Yeah. All right. A few more seconds, but it looks like some people are getting closer. All right. I think most or a few students are there. You can go ahead and put your lower your hand by clicking the lower hand thing if you're ready. And then, so if you guys are on page 34, I'm going to just set a timer for 3 minutes. And I want you guys to just read the passage. It should say passage 2 at the top. Read the passage and see how far you can get in 3 minutes. All right. So setting timer, go ahead and start reading. We have about 1 minute remaining. All right, that was your 3 minutes. So if just go ahead and stop where you are. It's okay if you didn't finish. So I want you to look at the chart that's on the slide right now, and determine what level of like reading speed you're at right now. So if you finish the whole passage and you have plenty of time to spare, then you'll be a 3. Just keep it in your mind. If you finish between half and 3/4 of the passage, so almost all, you're a 2. And then if you finish less than half, then you'll be a 1 just for the next exercise. So just keep that in your mind. And in the future, when you're practicing, the test recommends like 2.5 to 3 minutes. So I gave you guys a little bit of a longer, on the longer side. So practice around this time when you're reading passages. So if you're 3, like I said, you've read all of it, you should be able to read all or most of every passage and answer all the questions in the time allotted for the reading section. So far you're on a good track. If you were a 2, you should be able to read about 75%, so most of every passage, and answer most, if not all of the questions in the time allotted. I would encourage you to try some strategies that we'll talk about later, like skimming, or and specifically referencing back for details outlined in the questions. And then if you were a 1, which means you were at about half or less of the passage, it might be a good idea to put most of your time into reading the first 3 passages of the reading section, and then leaving about 5 minutes or so for the last passage, and you can just skim and guess. So you're really putting a lot of effort into the first 3, and being pretty certain that you're getting those answers right, or as close to right as you can, and then guessing on the last section. Also, just want to say this was just a practice. This is just a strategy for you to try. So if you feel like something else works for you, like outside of whatever level you were at, I want you to do what works best for you. That's the best option. And also keep in mind, if you were at like a 1 or a 2 and you want to increase your speed, that's totally possible. Just got to keep practicing. You can absolutely speed up your time. You can do this test on your own. It's really easy. Just set a timer for 2.5 to 3 minutes, read the passage, and see about where you are. Again, the best strategy for getting an improved score on the reading ACT is to just keep reading and practice the passages and questions. All right, our next tip is called Pencil Down and Quadrant, but most of you probably, especially if you're taking the ACT at school, will be taking your ACT on the computer, right? So not on paper. So we could say maybe cursor down in quadrant. Right now, unless you printed out your ACT guide, I assume all of you have the passages on your computer. So we'll practice this with our cursors. If you do have it printed out, feel free to do so. But this tip really centers around keeping you focused, and making it easier to underline or highlight as you go through. And then thinking of ways that you can identify markers in the passage to go back and find answers when questions ask for specifics. So this basically means that as you're reading the passage, you're keeping your pencil down or keeping your cursor really close to like the line that you're reading, and then trying to find at least one important marker in each quadrant. So quadrant means 4. If you divide the passage into 4 sections, you're underlining something or highlighting at least one thing in each of the 4 sections. So that way, when it's time to go reference another point or a question asks about a specific part of the story, you're like, I think that was at the beginning. Let me go back to this part. Was it before or after? It's just a way to help you quickly find and reference parts of the passages because, again, it's a really fast test. And the faster you can find specific answers and confirm that your answer's right, the better off you'll be. Cool? So with that being said, I know you, depending on how you have the webinar or the ACT guide pulled up, you may or may not be able to highlight. But if you do even just have like a pen and paper next to you or something, if you could just note one phrase or word or something that sticks out to you from each of the 4 quadrants of the set of the reading. Cool. So we're going to go back to the same reading we just did, passage 2 on page 34. And I'm going to set a timer again for 3 minutes. I want you to reread it and then highlight and note important phrases, at least one in each of the 4 sections. Does that make sense to everybody? Hopefully, give me a little. Cool. All right. So again, I'm going to pull up my timer, set it for 3 minutes, and I want you guys to note at least one phrase and or at least 4 phrases across the whole passage. So one in each of the 4 sections. All right. I'm going to go ahead and set my timer, and you guys can read passage 2. Great, you have about 1 minute left. All right, that's your minute or your 3 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So I want you guys to hopefully have some phrases or words that you highlighted in all the 4 sections. We're going to do a practice question and see how quickly you can get and find what's being referenced. Okay, so this is a question. It's question 17 in your passage. It says, based on the passage, the main reason Holmes eventually preferred playing music at weddings and private parties to playing music in clubs was that what? So really quickly. I want you to see how fast you can get to the section of the text, and then choose an answer. I'm going to give you guys about 20 seconds to have an answer in your mind, and then I'll give you about the line. Okay, so hopefully you guys all were able to find the line that it was referencing, or like around the line that you could check. I was looking on lines 56 through 58. And then anybody feeling brave and want to throw an answer that they think is correct in the chat, go for it, no judgment. I'll give you guys 30 seconds. If not, I'll just flip to the next slide. Okay. Maybe. Got some typers. All right, we're just going to reveal the answer. Hopefully you guys were able to figure it out. All right, so the answer that I had was C. So weddings and private parties were more profitable. And hopefully around lines 56 through 58, you can find where it talks about why he started shifting towards those types of gigs. Cool. I hope this was a little bit helpful and you guys were able to find it quickly. Sorry, it's hard to interact with you guys virtually, but we'll figure it out. Cool. All right. Tip number 3, context is absolutely everything for the reading ACT. So often there will be questions that ask about the meanings of words and phrases. It might ask about like specific lines and things like that. Please remember that it's usually not actually about the word or phrase itself, but about the context and the words around it. So words can mean different things in different contexts, and that's why it's really important that you're referencing the text and reading the sentence, at least the sentence before and after the line being referenced, so that you really know what's being talked about. You might think, and you probably are because you're super smart, but you might think that you know exactly what a certain word means, but you've been reading a lot. You're probably really tired after taking multiple sections of the ACT. So the more you can reference and confirm and do it quickly, the better off you'll be. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right. Next tip or like focus is going to be around main idea questions. So if you remember at the beginning, most of the questions on the ACT are going to focus around like main idea, understanding the author's points and context and things like that. So it's really, really important that you're not only reading and reading quickly, but comprehending what you're reading and being able to pull the main idea from each passage. So often the questions will ask for like a summary of the author's point of view, or for you to choose a statement that most closely mirrors what the author would agree with, or things like that. So I'll talk through some tips on how you can stay focused on the main idea, okay? So super fun thing called a topic sentence. Hopefully you guys have heard of topic sentences or worked with topic sentences in your classes. But a topic sentence is just a sentence that kind of helps you identify what the main idea is in the passage, what the author is getting at overall. Cool. So I think overall, you might be used to finding topic sentences, things like that. But if you can just go ahead and underline or highlight, or even just like write a little note to yourself about what line you think the topic sentence is on, it will help you stay on track for those main idea questions. Because like I said, you'll be reading a lot, your brain gets tired. The more you can confirm and quickly confirm what your hunches are, the better off you'll be. So something to keep in mind for finding the topic sentence, it's usually in the first 1 to 3 sentences of a paragraph. So each paragraph can have its own topic sentence, but also you can probably find a topic sentence or a few topic sentences for each passage. But if you can identify one that you think sticks with the main idea, that will help you reference. Also keep in mind, some authors might structure their passages or their paragraphs differently. Usually when we say that the topic sentences in the first 1 to 3 sentences, that'll probably be a main point first structure, where the main topic is introduced and then the author gives examples and then comments on those. Comments on that topic, gives more examples, etc., and then concludes. but sometimes there are passages where the author will give an example first. So let's think of how I can explain this better. But like, for example, if I was talking about what I ate for breakfast this morning, if I were doing main point first, I would say, this morning I had eggs and toast. And then I would say, my sister does not like eggs and toast, blah, 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 blah. But if I were doing example first, I might start with, lots of people eat lots of things for breakfast. Some people like cereal, others prefer warm oatmeal or something. And then I say, for breakfast today, I had eggs and toast. Then that would be an example first. I don't know if that is more confusing, but hopefully that cleared up what it might look like structurally. Instead of me jumping around and trying to make up examples about breakfast, how about you guys practice underlining, highlighting, trying to find a topic sentence on your own. So if you guys will turn to page 36 of the Preparing for the ACT document, I want you to just read the first paragraph of passage 3. If you guys could once again do the little raise hand icon. So like click the hand where it says raise when you get to page 36 and you feel like you're ready to read the first paragraph. Give you guys like 20 more seconds. Okie dokie. I'm gonna set a timer for like 45 seconds. It shouldn't take you guys too long to read the first paragraph. So I just want you to identify on your own, underline, highlight, note something, what you think the topic sentence would be for the very first sentence or first paragraph. All right, so go ahead and get started. All right, that was 45 seconds. So hopefully you guys identified a topic sentence in that first paragraph. Here is the topic sentence I chose. So I think it's line 3 to 4. Anybody want to do like a thumbs up or raise their hand if you also chose that sentence as your topic sentence? Perhaps. Awesome, Caroline, good job. I'll also say it's okay if you chose a different sentence. But I would hope that your sentence that you chose had something to do with how photographs can need some context, or like there's context to be had to understand the history of a photograph. This author also, just to like reference back to the structure of topic sentences and writing in general, this author, I would say, starts the passage with the main idea first. So he says the main idea that there's more than face value to any photo, and then gives examples of the photos of Goathale to support his main idea. So it was main idea first and then examples. Cool. Good job, guys. Hope that's helpful. All right, now we're going to do some more main idea questions, but specifically the questions that might be structured line specifically. So often you will have questions that ask you to reference certain lines. So it'll say lines 17 through 23 or something like that. And it might ask you for the main idea of just those lines or just that paragraph or something like that. So you can, again, use topic sentences for each paragraph if that's helpful for you. Or if it's referencing one specific paragraph, you just go back and like find one section that you want to underline. But generally, my main tip for these line specific questions the information is there for you, unless you're just like right there at the end and making your guesses. It's a good idea to reference the lines and figure out if you can like summarize what those lines are saying in your own words, and then try to answer the questions. I'll give you an example of that. So this is the passage that you read before, passage number 2. Going back to that one. So this question says, the main purpose of the third paragraph, lines 13 to 22, is to. So again, this is on page 34. I would, if I were you, quickly go back and read lines 13 through 22, and then in my mind, try to mentally summarize what it said. So my summary is a little bit long. Maybe I should make it shorter, but I would summarize that section as saying Holmes fell in love with music, especially rhythm and blues, after listening to it on the radio. When his brother brought home a guitar, he played a radio song and was addicted. That's what those lines said to me. So based on that summary, or your own summary of those lines after you read it, try to choose the answer that you think is correct. Again, if you're feeling brave, toss it in the chat. No pressure if you don't feel comfortable. All right, maybe just give me a raised hand if you think you have an answer. You don't have to tell me what it is. Okay. At least one person. Okay. All right. So the answer was D for that. So they said that the purpose of that paragraph was to describe what inspired Holmes to start playing music. So again, the radio and then his brother bringing home a guitar is what inspired him to play music. Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Appreciate you. Again, so probably wouldn't have to do with why he preferred certain types of songs to Sinatra, at least not in those lines. Probably didn't talk about his parents very much, or that they disapproved of his interest in music. And it didn't necessarily point to him being a musical prodigy. It just said that he liked to start playing guitar, right? It didn't say that he was super amazing. So D was the closest answer. All right. The next tip is for a specific kind of passage that you'll probably encounter, or you definitely will encounter on the reading section of the ACT. So there will always be at least one reading passage that features 2 mini paired passages and a series of 10 questions to go along with that. In the reading section, the cool thing about that is that they will give you headers, and all of the questions will specify which passage they're asking about. So I can give a little bit of examples. So usually the 2 passages will talk about a similar topic or category. It might be 2 authors that have 2 different perspectives on something. It might be 2 authors that wrote about similar things but have different takes. And then the questions will ask you to answer about passage A, passage B, and then eventually you'll have questions that compare and contrast the 2 passages. So the good thing about these paired passages, it's going to be a little bit like, it'll seem like a lot to read all at once and a little bit overwhelming. But 1, the questions always specify which passage, like I said, and 2, it always goes in order. So generally speaking, the first few questions will be only about passage A. If you don't trust me, you can always check and like read the question first. So if you're making sure that the first question is about passage A, only read passage A and answer the questions about passage A first. And then when you get to a question that's about passage B, then read passage B and answer questions about passage B. And then you'll have read both of them together, and then you can answer the questions about both with confidence because you've already read both of the passages. The main tip here is to not waste your time at the very beginning reading both of the passages. There's really no need, because they're only going to ask about each passage as an individual like mini passage, if that makes sense. So make sure that you're not wasting your time by reading both of them at once, because eventually you'll get all the information for when you need to compare and contrast. Cool. All right. Next tip. I hope you got these tips in the other 2. But but generally process of elimination is going to help you so much in at least narrowing down when you have to make a guess. So if you can eliminate or say for sure that you know one or two of the answer choices are incorrect, and you can go ahead and roll those out, cross them out, hide them, whatever your test looks like, however you can like get rid of that one and know you're not answering that choice, then that narrows down your guesswork, right? So instead of having a 25% chance of getting something right, now you have a 50% chance, even if you're just guessing later on. Also for the reading ACT, it can be a good idea if you're like super duper guessing, like you really have no idea, if there are any answer choices that say things like never or always, especially in relation to an author's opinion, or if it's like a science-based reading or a politics-based reading. Generally, those like really explicit always or never answers can be X'd out if you're really genuinely guessing. Right. So always using process of elimination, especially if you're leaving a question and coming back to answer it later or need to guess. All right. And we're about to wrap up here, but my final tip for you guys is to just practice. I know it's not super duper helpful right now for you guys getting information, but the best way for you guys to improve your reading score is to practice, practice, practice. So it only takes about 8 minutes to read through a passage and answer all the questions. You can try to do one passage every day, or even every week, or every 2 days, or something like that, to improve your practice with, or like increase your practice with these reading passages. I would also encourage you to try different strategies. So I didn't really know how to encourage you guys to do different strategies right now while we're in a virtual space, but if you're practicing on your own, try these 3 strategies and see what works for you. So maybe first you skim a passage and then answer the questions. Maybe the next time you do a passage, you read the questions first and then skim the passage. And then maybe the third time that you read a different passage, do them at the same time. So like maybe you're reading the passage and like glancing at questions, or glancing at questions and reading the passage. But don't try new strategies the first time you take the test. Try new strategies and practice new strategies, see what works for you before you take the test, so that when you get into that testing environment, you know what your plan is, and you are used to using that plan, if that makes sense. So everyone's brain works differently. I want you guys to do as much practice as you can, get better at comprehension, increase your speed, and figure out how to find those specific answers quickly and efficiently. Cool. All right, I got a question. What if the question is not even talking about the passage? How do you answer? I'm not totally sure what kind of question that would be, but maybe you mean it's not giving you a specific line to look at, or maybe it's asking about like a general opinion. Again, that would probably be more of a comprehension question, and it might be a question that is asking you to like pull on some general outside knowledge and connect it to the reading. So again, that would be doing your best at comprehension and like circling back to your own personal knowledge, making your best guess there. If I didn't explain, if that's not your question, maybe try again. Or if anybody, if Mary or anybody has a better interpretation. Okay. Yeah.
No, I think you're right, spot on. Yeah, the questions that I think tend to trip students up are the ones that don't reference a particular line. The ones that say go to line, 2 through 4, whatever it is, tend to be easier to answer because you know exactly where you're looking, and you want to read a couple sentences or a couple lines before, a couple lines after to get the context. But if they don't give you that specific line, what Nina said is exactly right. It's going to be a comprehension question. It's going to be an understanding of what the question asks. So it may not reference a specific line, but you should have the information based on the passage anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also where maybe using those topic sentences might come in handy if it's asking for main idea, or if it's just asking for a specific example. At least when you have the underlined like 4 sections, hopefully you can at least know generally where they might be talking about if they don't give you a specific line reference. You're welcome. Thanks, Lucas. Appreciate it.
One of the things I want to share with y'all, since we have a few minutes, we planned this to go to 4:30. Not that I'm going to hold you till 4:30, but there are a couple things that I wanted to tell you. In the reading section, you're going to get different types of passages. Like the first one's always going to be a literary or a literature-based passage. And then the second one tends to be on history or social sciences, something along those lines. The third one returns to kind of an art space. So it might be about art itself, but it'll be more lending itself to the humanities types of topics. So maybe some psychology, maybe something along those lines. And then the last one is going to be science-based. So what's nice about that is everybody tends to have strengths within the subject areas. So if you really enjoy reading literature and fiction and those types of things, then the first essay may speak to you, and it may be easier because you're going to enjoy it because that's the type of reading that you enjoy doing. If you're like me, I'm more of a math science person. I always enjoyed reading passage number 4 because that spoke to who I am. I'm more along those lines, and I enjoy reading about science topics. So keep that in mind. They always put them in that same type of order. And so if you don't like literature, you don't have to do the first one. You can skip to the 4th passage. And with you guys doing this test online, it's kind of easy. You can just kind of click through a couple of things and find that last passage. So know that they always do literature, social sciences, back to an arts type of thing, and then science, always. They're bringing in something called quantitative visual interpretation. So there may be something along a chart or a diagram type of thing that will be embedded within the reading. So just be aware of that. It's new, so there aren't examples out there right now, but really you're going to read a passage and they're going to say, okay, based on this passage and this chart, what kind of determination can you make? But it's the same skill. It's understanding what you're reading. And the absolute last thing, and this applies to all 4 tests, do not leave anything blank. If you are running out of time and you haven't gotten through all 4 passages, that's okay. I'm a slow reader too. When I was doing the reading, it was brutal for me because I do read very slowly. So if you're running out of time and you get that, hey, you got 5 minutes left and you haven't gotten to a passage, that's okay. But go through and pick your favorite bubble. If it's the first bubble, mark all those blank ones in the first bubble. If your favorite bubble is the third one, mark all those remaining ones in the third bubble. Don't mix it up. Don't start making pretty designs. Just choose a row and keep bubbling in that row and make sure every single question has an answer, even if you didn't get a chance to read, and really answer the questions with fidelity. Make sure everything has an answer. Because the way the ACT scores things is if you get something right, they give you points. If you get something wrong, they ignore it. So you're just racking up points. So if you leave something blank, you're basically saying, I don't want those points. You can just have them. Whereas if you filled in a bubble and you happen to fill in the right bubble, you would get points. So don't leave anything blank. That is my last kind of general tip. Nina, you have anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. Thank you, Mary. Those are helpful tips for sure. Because I think also something that I hear often is on the reading ACT, if you're excited about what you're reading or interested, or can at least fake a little bit of interest, it's going to help you with that comprehension. So again, like Mary said, if there's a specific type of passage that works for your brain, maybe start with that one. Because if you know you're getting an answer right versus guessing, at least, I don't know, I'd rather know I'm getting an answer right and be excited about it than at least, guessing is better than nothing, but yeah, good
Yep,
stuff.
absolutely. All right. As you know, we are recording this and it will be placed on the Metro Nashville Public Schools YouTube channel. Once it is loaded there publicly, I will send you an email again with the direct link to the video. And I will also include the preparing for the ACT test guides again. And if I remember, I will send you a link to an online practice test. Since you're going to be doing this online, you might as well use the online practice test so you can get used to the tools that are available. It's going to be the same tools, the same outline or same layout, same format that is on your actual online ACT. And so we want you to be able to practice that too. And if you get that email and I forgot to include that link, feel free to respond and say, Ms. Cook, we need the practice test link too. And I'll get that sent out to everybody. Any last questions or thoughts from anybody about anything we covered today or anything about the ACT? and you can come off from mute or put it in the chat either way. All right, I don't see any typing and I don't hear anybody coming off from mute. So with that, we're going to end this one a little bit early at 4:20 here. Thank you so much for coming. We really do appreciate it. I hope that you got some, well, Nina shared some amazing tips. I hope that you are able to apply those. Please do use that preparing for the ACT test guide to do some practice. It has a full length test in it, and it also has the answers in the back so you can see how you're doing. You don't have to just answer the questions and then cross your fingers. You can actually check them. It also gives some other information about the test that you may want to know, what you can bring, how to prepare. Although you're doing a good job preparing, attending this webinar, I'm kind of stalling a little bit because I see somebody typing and they want to be able to get to their question when it pops up. You got to love Teams. Sometimes it moves really quickly, sometimes it doesn't. So.
I was also going to add to so you can use these practice questions. I would really encourage everyone to use the online one that Mary's going to send out. I'm sure that'll be helpful. Also, there are lots of ACT books that you can check out from your library at school or your local library, and they have lots of practice tests and questions too. So if you're looking for doing these 8 minutes of practice for one passage, those are all good places to look too.
Yes, every one of the high school libraries has practice books. Don't worry if it doesn't say 2022, 2023 on it. If it says 2019 to 2020, it's fine. It will still cover what you need. Okay, all the dots left. So I think the person may have changed their mind about asking a question or sharing some information. So with that, we're going to let you go. You have a really good evening. I hope we'll see you next week for the ACT science preparation, which Nina is also doing that one for us. Have a good evening, everybody.